just a small part of the American dream. Ownership really does matter. Shelter really does matter. An opportunity to be supported while you may go through a certain set of challenges. And whether it's eviction or separation from a life partner, maybe it's being now noted as other abled or a person living with a noted disability. Our responsibility is to ensure that no one is left destitute without clean, affordable shelter and housing. We believe that housing is the anchor of all other opportunities. Once we are able to solidify and anchor a person, they're able to start thinking about education and opportunities in a different way. They're able to maintain employment and think about tracks that can move them up, rather than walking away from opportunities because they say, I'm so unstable right now, and my floor is shifting underneath my feet. So I won't put in for the promotion because I don't know what I may have to do and where I may have to live. So today's panel is all about anchoring opportunity. We have with us Ron Lund, he's Project Now's Community Service Director, Leslie Kilgannon, Director of Quad Cities Housing Council, retired 14th Circuit Court Judge, Carol Pentuit, James Jones, Housing Manager with Economic Growth Corporation. Would you help me to celebrate and appreciate the work that has already been done? And so for the panel, I'm going to call it audible. I'm going to merge just two things together very quickly. Ron, you'll be the test case for this. Your particular responsibility in thinking about those experiencing homelessness, the shelter networks for the counties that we're able to facilitate through the continuum of care, and all of the support systems that are in place. I'd like for you to be able to at least start off with what it is that you do and the team that assists, but also what great challenges are they? Not just simply talking about so much of what we get noted for, but what is left undone.
So Dwight, I'm gonna. Those of you that know me, I am a numbers guy. That's truly where the story is to be told. Currently, right now, these numbers are about a week old, and I apologize because James and Leslie are just going to hear this again. There are 450 households right now in our community that are homeless. That is 650 individuals, 74 children, 39 of them under the age of 5 years old. May not necessarily be a huge concern for some right now. It is warm. What do you do when it gets cold? That is a huge challenge at this point. As Dwight had mentioned, Project Now is the lead agency of the Northwestern Illinois Continuum of Care. We cover 15 counties. So out of those 15 counties, we really have a couple specialized programs. We've got 30 youth beds, 30. We've got 74 kids right now, so we're short 44 beds. We've got 16 beds that are dedicated towards those that are living with HIV or AIDS. In total, we've got 275 beds that our continuum counts for 15 counties. Where are the other 200 or 400 individuals going to go tonight? Out of that is $1.7 million that the continuum controls. That is not nearly enough to solve the homeless crisis in this community. That is the challenge. Beds and money.
I hope that those that are taking notes, we're going to come back and talk solutions, but we're going to keep the plane at about 30,000 feet right now before we start taking our descent to be able to land safely and adequately upon some possibilities that we could take away from this, that we may be able to use the great pool of genius and architects for a better society that is present, and should change some cards, and let's have a conversation about how this doesn't happen on our watch. Thanks, Ron. Leslie, you have been at the fore for some time now. The Housing Council, the Quad City Housing Council itself and the cluster have been at it, really ringing the bell and the alarm about some things that we should be paying attention to. For those that don't know you or the work that you are privileged to lead, help us to understand that work. But I'm going to ask again that we pull back the curtain and say this is what is exposed and uncovered for us to be able to find some possible solutions for.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today. Happy 55th anniversary. My name's Leslie Kilgannon, and I'm the director of the Quad Cities Housing Council. We're the resource development arm for a consortium called the Quad Cities Housing Cluster. It's a consortium by state, both sides of the river, so encompasses organizations in Scott and Rock Island counties. And we work to collaborate, leverage our dollars, coordinate our efforts, prioritize what's most important around the entire continuum of affordable housing. Everything from shelter, DV shelter, transitional supportive housing, rehabbing to keep people in their homes, all the way to affordable home ownership. The Housing Council is the C3, and we also act as the local housing trust fund for Scott County and manage dollars for Muscatine County. And I would say, Ron, you put it succinctly, units and dollars. I guess you're going to hear a lot of that because it's true. We are struggling. These are pre-pandemic numbers, but we did something called Silos to Solutions. It's an affordable housing vision in which we took a look at the problem. And in the Quad Cities, pre-pandemic, we needed 6,545 units of affordable rental housing for those at the extremely low income category. And of course, that's the one thing I did not look up today. But for a family of 4, right now, that's a little under $24,000. So someone would be in that extremely low income category. Partner that with losing about 30% of housing stock that would be otherwise be available for people in that income category over the last 10 years. And we have a housing crisis, not just homelessness, which is kind of that first and foremost issue that gets attention, but in rental housing. People can't afford to find safe, decent, affordable housing, and it's not just impacting people at that extremely low income.
So you've heard of the challenge with the shortage pre-pandemic. I know of firsthand how many that I've talked to that said, I can't keep this up. I can't make my bills. I'm gonna have to shut down this property and think about something else. And that was in the mid portion of the pandemic, around 21 when it was really ugly. And we were trying to find a way forward. So you know those numbers have grown since then. And so part of our solution making process today, because this is a working group, everyone is employed for the betterment of humanity today, regardless of where you come from, what particular stance that you have in position and power. We're all powerful today because we're working together to try to hear and make known the needs of people, but also find some solution possibilities. Judge, we thank you because of your work sitting on the bench and facilitating so many different concerns. One of the things that our agency was privileged to do was to come alongside of you and with a few other partners around the problem or the challenge that we had with evictions. For those that don't know, I would love for you to be able to unpack the eviction diversion program that we have and the partners and the work and what went about that process and what has come out of it since then, because it's an ongoing work. Judge?
As everyone is aware, or maybe not be aware, during the pandemic, there was a moratorium on evictions. And there was a federal one, and there was one on a state level. And the courts were slowing down, and we were closed because people could not come together like this. Fortunately, judges have to take continuing legal education. And my background before I became a judge is I started out at Prairie State Legal Services. I was one of the housing attorneys. You can stop clapping. Then I went to private practice, and then I evicted people. So I saw both sides. I represented the tenants, I represented the landlords, I was aware of both sides, and then I went on to the bench. I did watch a seminar about what was going to happen when the moratorium's lifted. And the phrase was a tsunami of evictions. And we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that when the moratorium was lifted, there were going to be tons of people being evicted. And there was actually a seminar, a group on the state level, a task force that was judges, private attorneys, some social service agencies, and we would meet by Zoom. And the position of many of the judges and many of the attorneys was, you know how we deal with this tsunami? We get extra judges assigned to eviction court, and we run extra eviction court, and we evict as many people as we can to get caught up. And there was somebody from Prairie State on that group from Peoria, and there was me. And we said, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Why would we speed up this process when there are other solutions? And the CLE I'd seen online was from Michigan, and they had the courts, their local community action agencies, legal services, the Bar Association, the state funds for housing, and they were working together to stop that tsunami and not increase the homelessness, because we know what happens. Our juvenile courts are packed. This has an impact across all borders. So I contacted Gretchen at Prairie State Legal Services, who's the managing attorney, Gretchen Farwell, and I said, what's happening on a statewide level? And not much was. And I said, who's administering the money locally? And she said, Project Now. And I said, well, I don't know who's involved in Project Now. And she goes, I do. And she got a hold of Dwight and Ron. And there's also the public PILI, which is a program that works with the local bars that tries to get attorneys engaged. And so we got a hold of our bar association, and Jen Kincaid with the Bar Association, who is a landlord's attorney. So she went into this kicking and screaming. And we said, what can we do? And Dwight said, listen, we got a lot of money, and nobody's using it. And this is going to pay landlords, and this is going to get tenants caught up. So Prairie State worked with the Bar Association, and Michelle Fitzsimmons, who is now a judge and has taken over where I was, she worked with Jen Kincaid to come up with a packet that went to everybody who was getting evicted. So when you got served with your court papers for eviction, you got a toolkit that explained to you how the process worked. You got Prairie State's information, you got Project Now's information, you got the Salvation Army's information. You were given all the information of the resources that was available. And then when you got to court, we worked with several volunteers, and we've got some wonderful attorneys and retired judges who mediate. So you would come to the courthouse, you were then set up for mediation. Everyone has to go through mediation. Project Now's in the hallway, Prairie State's in the hallway. We made sure everybody was aware of the programs. People applied for assistance. Landlords, they were shutting their businesses down because they weren't getting paid. So this wasn't a tenants program like people like to accuse it of. So what happened is it slowed the roll. It was a spigot that we shut down so that people could get the services they need and try to get the assistance they need. The numbers showed that the majority of the cases, once this program started, were either through an agreed disposition, cases were dismissed, but was not happening is that there weren't nearly as many evictions because it was getting resolved through the eviction diversion program. So the idea was to take partners who did not normally partner, take people who were sometimes adversarial, come up with a program and a way to slow the roll to get the people the assistance they needed. Is it perfect? No, but it made a big difference. And I do know that Rock Island, Cook County were several of the few counties that had a program. A lot of places in the state, they just increased the number of judges and evicted more people, and that didn't solve anything.
Judge, could you also lift up any of the challenges? Are the numbers still flowing in at the same rate? And is there evidence that are working alongside of each other for the years of coming alongside? In percentage points, how did we fare? What is left to do?
Well, and now that I'm retired, I don't have access to things I used to have access to. But I did speak to Judge Fitzsimmons, and from 1/22 to 12/22, there were 135 evictions were dismissed outright. 107 were dismissed with prejudice, which means they could not be refiled. 425 were dismissed without prejudice, which means they could be refiled if there was a problem, but there were only 194 actual eviction orders entered. And most of those evictions are sealed, so that if somebody looks into somebody's past rental history, it will not show an eviction on their record. And the numbers were better going into it, but we couldn't find them. So I don't have.
No, thank you, Judge. I think you painted a picture that is worth our attention to be able to see that the evictions are still happening. We are still at the courthouse to this very day. And even upon your retirement, that the effort is still going on with Judge Fitzsimmons, and we stay connected as a coalition working for the cause. And that's what I'm most thankful for. We're not out of the woods yet, but I tell you that the pathway is getting wider and the tributary is getting wider to move people to a better place of self-sufficiency and keeping people housed and satisfying, to your point, the debt that was owed to those property owners to keep small businesses alive and providing more stock for individuals to consider when they can move into a place. So thank you and the team so very much. We appreciate it. Our last thought comes in, which is the natural flow of opportunity. We want to secure people, not everyone, because of stage in life or maybe considerations that are of their own independently, seek to own. But there are far too many people that could be owners, that are not owners, that are paying far too much in rent, that could have been used to invest in the property so it can be transferred wealth to a family. And so our hopes, James, is to have a conversation about what it is that you do as an expert in the field, but also about what challenges are you still seeing. Are we having enough people into these home ownership classes? Where are the bottlenecks? What are the challenges that keep people from moving into this wonderful opportunity that is available for so many at this time?
Okay, well, thank you, Dwight. I really appreciate you and your staff putting this event together, because these are the types of conversations that we need to embrace in order to provide a path to a solution. And I want to talk about, as far as the path of home ownership and the challenges, as far as like what I still see. And I think it's really on financial capability. You know, sometimes people may not realize that they are actually in a path to become a homeowner. That simply comes to maybe not taking a look at their budget, you know, more or less, you know, taking account to how much money they have going in versus how much money they have going out. And again, it seems simple enough, but if I don't have the insight or just more or less the knowledge to take care of this, you know, that might present a challenge in itself. And no matter where we are in this world, you know, unfortunately, these financial empowerment skills are not required by schools, it's not required by your employer, but it is indeed required in order for you to become financially independent, to realize, you know, what your capabilities are. And we need to continue to have these conversations and continue to offer maybe some financial empowerment classes or maybe some home buyer classes. And I just want to make people understand that there's indeed a tight connection between being a homeowner and maybe somebody that's avoiding a foreclosure, because we do the same steps. It all starts with figuring out what your financial capability is. And again, that's something that people may embrace it, but then again, people may find a difficulty in embracing as far as what they can do for, you know, their family to increase their financial capability. You know, so I think awareness is probably the biggest challenge that we have. We need to keep on having these conversations to maybe increase home ownership, and then maybe home ownership might not be your goal, but it still should be your goal to be financially capable to take care of your family, take care of yourself. And then us, as leaders in the community, I want to say that it's our responsibility to make sure that we have our share of humble pie, basically, because I want people to know that homelessness, and this can happen to any one of us, because a lot of this has to do with a life situation. You know, before I got into this field, I thought, hey, that person, you know, they're going through a foreclosure because they didn't pay their bill, this and that. But I couldn't have been more wrong than that, because a lot of times it's a situation, it's a life event that happens to a person to where it prevents them being able to move on. You know, they could lose their job. You could have a health complication, whatever it may be, but it's a cause and effect. And it's up to us to make sure that we get people back on the right track to avoid a foreclosure or to find out that they can help themselves by just going back to square one, understanding your financial capability. So I think awareness, making sure we keep on having these conversations might be one of the biggest challenges I have, in this field.
Thank you. You mentioned awareness, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's essentially something that I may have an opportunity to talk about a little later in the day. But a lot of resources sometimes fly over the head of the people that need them most. And I know we have our own kind of trafficking of communication streams, and we have our e-blast and our text blast that we do. But so many people are disconnected because, again, poverty separates and segregates. And individuals say, well, if I'd only known, I would have probably taken advantage of that. I want to broaden the idea of personal responsibility as we go back to ask each one of our panelists about 2 or 3 things that they believe that we should do. But I want to frame your 2 or 3 things that we should be doing. And I also want to take a step further. And as we started to think about our partnership together as a community, the 2 or 3 things that we should be doing, if you have one that is a priority that we can do now, let's put that out there so that we can start brainstorming of how we can come around the corner and see a better future. James, if there are 2 or 3 things that we can do, what would it be? Do we need to have much more connectivity with the local school districts? Is it that we need to embed this opportunity within programming that is existing? Where are we missing it? What can we do? What should we be doing now?
And again, I want to appreciate the educators out there, and it's so easy to sometimes to place the blame, and I definitely don't want to blame the educational institution because they need resources. They need to have teachers to teach these classes when it comes to financial literacy. I think if we keep on having that conversation, maybe the educational system can generate those funds to provide that additional resource to get this education out there. So I want to say that's definitely one of the solutions, and that's something that we can do better. And then just, I have to say that, on a positive note, I have been seeing more awareness in the community. I have been seeing more financial empowerment opportunities. So we need to connect those dots, like you said, to make sure people know that these are out there. And, we can do that by having that conversation, maybe utilizing social media more, and getting that word out to let people know that these resources are available. Because I do see a lot of times where, like you said, hey, I didn't know that this program was in existence, so I guess we gotta do our better part.